I was pulled by, this desire to do something to help the refugees that were coming. So I often tell people that you hear on the news, this country is going through a civil war, and you're like, oh, it's just a place on the map. But for us, it actually really hit home. Like I said, 80% of the factories were destroyed, and I got to meet the last person that makes brocade.
This idea that money doesn't buy happiness is like, you don't know what that's like when you can't provide things you want to provide for your children.
One of the most difficult things running any kind of company is the survival of the company, especially when it's a company that is like a smaller company or it's mission driven.
What do you think is one of the most underrated wardrobe items?
I think a really beautiful, simple,
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Founders in Jeans. I'm your host, Emily Jean. And before we get into the episode, I just want to say a huge thank you so much for listening to my podcast. It means the world to me. I also wanted to say that if you enjoy the show, feel free to leave a review on Spotify or Apple, wherever you're listening to this, and also to follow us. You can follow us on Spotify, of course. You can follow us on Instagram at Founders in Jeans. You can also find me on Instagram at emily.jeans, or you can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect with people on there, and I have a lot of good conversations from listeners. Also, you can always leave a bad review for us. I'm totally fine with that. And in fact, I think that's exciting. I would love to know what we can do to improve. So you can also leave comments below and let me know what you enjoyed, what you didn't enjoy. I actually do read every single one. We also have a newsletter that comes out once a week, so you can get all the updates from us. We also put in some weekly business and marketing updates in there, as well as some personal notes from me. You can subscribe to that on my LinkedIn, also through the Instagram and in the show notes below. Anyways, that is all from me. I'm so excited for you to listen to this episode. I hope it's a good one, and I'll chat to you soon. Okay, so Shahd Alasaly of Blue Meets Blue, welcome to Founders in Jeans. I'm so excited to have you today. For people that don't know you, why don't you give me a little bit of a bio about yourself?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. A little bit about myself. I am a sociologist by training. My background is in sociology. I teach at the university. I teach social psychology, which is really exciting because I get to incorporate all of the things that I'm excited about. So we talk a lot about social trauma, collective trauma, historical wounds in class as it pertains to society, bearing witness, and all of these really important concepts. Outside of my academic interests, I have written a kid's book about humanitarianism, and I am also the founder of Blue Meets Blue, which is a clothing line that employs refugees in the United States.
Yeah. I actually want to kind of have a lot of questions for you, obviously.
Awesome.
Blue Meets Blue, that's a great name. Where does it come from?
Yeah, so I think when I was trying to imagine this journey that refugees take when they leave their countries, oftentimes it is a journey that is extremely dangerous and it entails being on a boat. And the only thing that they can see is the blue of the ocean meeting the blue of the sky. And so for me, that felt like it was a representation of freedom and a journey to freedom. So that's where the name came from. And yeah, we launched in 2015, and we have been working within the refugee community ever since.
That's I love that visual. That's a very powerful visual. So I guess I'm curious then. I want to ask, is there kind of a moment that made you begin to think, or period, you begin to think about how fashion could be more than just clothing, but also a tool for healing and change?
Yeah. So before sociology, my graduate work was actually international psychology. And just as I was finishing my thesis, my background's Syrian, my family's from Syria. The civil war in Syria had broken out in 2011. And in 2013, we were starting to see a lot of refugees coming to the country. So I often tell people that, you hear on the news, this country is going through a civil war. This country, and you're like, oh, it's just a place on the map. But for us, it actually really hit home. And I was pulled by, this desire to do something to help the refugees that were coming. And so I wanted to do something really creative because I had this creative itch, always liked design and fashion design. And so I wanted it to be a source of art therapy, but without calling it therapy. So it was sort of this experience where these women would get together, and while they were sewing, while they were working, they would have these very difficult conversations. And it was so special to see that happen because you can automatically feel like this is a safe space. They feel, they trust me enough to share this information. But also, it was a, moment for them where they felt like they could connect with one another with somebody else who's been through a similar experience, which is so important for anybody that's experienced trauma, is that space of holding. So that was sort of this space that was a safe space. It was a holding space for them to talk a lot about what they had been through while they were also working on their own skill set. So these were women that used to sew back in their country. That was a big deal for me because statistically, a lot of refugees that come to the United States or Germany or wherever, the skill set doesn't translate. So they're often doing jobs that are not what they used to do because that doesn't translate over. And as you can imagine, that also exacerbates feelings of depression and sadness of, my skill set's not being acknowledged. And so I really wanted them to work in their skill set. I wanted them to have prior experience in sewing. And it was just really special to see that come together.
I know, I can tell, and because I know
Mhm.
you've said that your work is really rooted in trauma and
Yeah.
displacement and this kind of idea of collective healing. So,
Yeah.
how do you think those ideas actually show up in a garment?
So the pieces that we make, they're always like, both of these things. You have craftsmanship, which is one part of it, but then there's also the story behind it. And so, for example, we're known for our A-line skirts, right? So, a skirt made with our Damascus brocade, it's not just fabric, but it's also the survival of brocade factories, right? So you have this, very two-sided situation that we're dealing with. We want craftsmanship, but we also really care about the story. It's also a resistance to erasure, right? So at some level, the brocade factories, and actually many garment factories in Syria were intentionally destroyed during the war. And so about 80%. And so I had gone to Syria this past summer, and I'm sure I'll get to this later, but the goal this summer, because the Assad regime fell this past year, which was amazing. So Syria became free. So it became a full moment for us. Went back in the summer and I sourced the fabric from there. And I really intentionally wanted to get brocade, Damascus brocade fabric, which is a very pure silk, because like I said, 80% of the factories were destroyed. And I got to meet the last person that makes brocade. So it was a really special moment for us. And we actually had stopped Blue Meets Blue in 2019. This was a time that was a little bit challenging for us to continue. I was moving to another state. We started in Chicago. I moved to Florida. And then COVID hit. So it was almost impossible to have that same, have women in the same room. And I didn't want, I didn't want to have anybody, potentially get sick or anything like that. And so for a while we stopped and I just put it on the back burner. I was like, was really great. I was very proud of it, but moving on to the next thing. And like I said, this year when the Assad regime fell, I was like so inspired to start this up again and go back to Syria. And it became full circle because the fabric's coming from there now. And then the refugees over here are working on it.
I want to ask you something. It's not in my outline here, but
Mhm,
I'm curious. For me, listening to this, I'm thinking to myself, I really don't know that much about Syria, and I don't know
mhm,
that much about the Syrian experience in America. I think that's true for a lot of Westerners.
mhm.
Why do you think that is, though? Because I know it's a huge thing happening in the world. I know a lot of people are
Right.
affected by it, and it's a large community. What is kind of the disconnect that's going on there?
I think it's multifactorial. It was a civil war, right? So it was kind of something that was seen over here as something that's happening over there, right? It doesn't affect us. It's not something that we're impacted by. Don't think and there was a lot of people that didn't even know where Syria was on the map until the civil war had started. And so I think that that's really the main issue when it's not affecting people. It's something that we can easily ignore. We can easily say it's happening on the other side of the world. And so I think that's honestly the main reason. But additionally, I would say now, I mean, now the region has been in the news in general, and it's definitely something that people are more aware of because there's been so many refugees that have come to the country. So now you've got kids that have friends that are from Syria, right? That are their classmates, neighbors, businesses that have opened up because Syrians have come and they brought with them cuisine and culture and really incredible, parts of their heritage. So, yeah.
Yeah. I thank you for letting me switch gears a little bit. I was just as you were speaking, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm suddenly feeling a little bit out of my element in a good way." But I know you wrote a kid's book about humanitarianism,
Mhm.
which I think kind of goes back to what we're talking about a little bit. Why do you think it was so important to start this conversation with children?
Yeah, so it's a part of a bigger series, which is a kid's book about. So I believe the first book was in 2019. The founder of the whole company or publishing agency was Jelani Memory. And he wrote a kid's book about racism after George Floyd. And then right after, somebody wrote a kid's book about systemic racism. And they basically reached out to experts in whatever field to write about a really important topic because the understanding is that kids are not too young to have these conversations, right? Sometimes the parents don't have the toolkit and they don't have the language that's needed to be able to have these conversations. They're like, I don't know how to talk to my kid about this. So the way these books are, they're supposed to be a read along where you're sitting down with your child, you're having these important conversations, but also understanding that kids get it. Like, I think they get it more than we do, right? At some level, if you talk to a kid about kindness and you talk to a kid about empathy, it's just like very easy. They can understand what kindness is a lot more than adults do. As adults, we put in all these layers, right? We put in politics and we put in she looks different and she dresses different and she talks different. And so, we've got all these layers. Kids don't. The kids are a lot more innocent. And so I think having that conversation from an early age about empathy and about kindness in very active language is so important. I'm a mom. I have 3 kids, and I tell my kids all the time, if anything, the most important thing that you can do is lead with kindness, and that'll get you really far in life. So, yeah, that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah. I love what you said there about kids sometimes get it better than we do. I think that's
Yeah,
very true. Is there
yeah.
kind of one lesson that you think kids grasp specifically about compassion, empathy that adults usually struggle with?
Like that, I mean, I really think that kids just don't overcomplicate empathy, right? Like for them, if they see a kid crying, they just go naturally, instinctively, and they hug him, right? Or like they ask if they're okay. They even like young kids, right? Like I'll share my lollipop with you. Kids are instinctively kind. They don't have these layers that unfortunately with time and exposure to people with different understandings, they don't have that. For them, it's just very instinctive. So, yeah.
Yeah. I know you're working on some new books. Can you
Mhm.
talk to me a little bit about what they'll explore without giving everything away?
Yeah. So, my next book that's coming out that I'm really excited about, it's called From There to Here. The point is that you can assume that it's from anywhere there and to anywhere here, right? Because refugees travel around the world. It's also a children's book for early chapter readers. And this follows the journeys of a few children that are refugees from different countries. And so they basically start out at the resettlement center, which is where refugees go to learn about cultural orientation and all of these things. So their parents, and this story, their parents are doing cultural orientation, and these kids are meeting for the first time at the resettlement agency. And so you have a child from Syria, a child from Lebanon, a child from Iraq, a child from Palestine, a child from Sudan, and they're all sharing their last experience of being in their country for the last time. And, they're it's like that fear component of where they came from and also what they're holding on to, and this understanding of belonging, right? Through new friendship, through new country. What does belonging and identity mean? So that's the next one that's coming out this year.
So I do have to ask, because
Hmm.
you are juggling a lot. You
Hmm.
are, of course, a sociology instructor, fashion founder, and an author, active author. I'm really want to know, how do you balance all of this in one go?
I don't know. I think I get bored very quickly. So I need to have multiple projects happening. Like everybody works differently. And I have friends that ask me this. They're like, how are you able? And I need to have a different project for Monday that is not the same as the project for Tuesday. And I need to actively be engaged with students because they inspire me. And I want to also feel like I'm doing something that I'm gonna leave for my children, right? Eventually in the future. And um, so yeah, and then also, I don't know, ADHD probably. I think for those of us that have, this like constant need for new novel projects, it kind of hits all of that, crosses off checks all the boxes, I guess.
Well, good. It's very impressive.
I appreciate that.
So going back to kind of the storytelling, and I want to get back into fashion because I went off on a tangent there, which I
Mhm,
usually do. I
mhm,
want to know, is there kind of a story from a refugee artisan that
mhm.
has stayed with you every time you design or create?
I mean, I remember when we had first started working together, one of the artisans came to me and she was telling me how excited that she was able for the first time to buy new supplies and like a new uniform for her child. But like even more than that, she was also able to send, I think, like cupcakes for his birthday. And it meant so much to her because his friends always used to bring cupcakes for their birthdays. And he, never was able, he wasn't able to do that the year before. And it left like a lasting, like it felt really bad for her as a parent that she wasn't able to do that for her child. So that next year when she was working with us, she was really excited that that was something that she was able to do. And I was like, it's the simple things.
Mm,
Sometimes it's like you want these like a grand tangible, like what success looks like, I guess, but it's really these small stories that you're like, "Oh my gosh, like that's just everything."
Yeah, my mom was a school teacher for a
Mhm,
really long time,
mhm,
and she worked in King City, which is a very just poor community in
mhm,
California. And she used to say, like this idea that money doesn't buy happiness is like,
mhm.
you don't know what that's like when you can't provide things you want to provide for your children. Like, you can't
Of
say
course,
that,
of course.
which has always really stuck with me. I think that's
Yeah,
very true.
mhm, yeah. I think that's a very reductionist way of looking at things when things are going well. When things are not going well, there's definitely,
Yeah. Yeah. Money is power. So yeah, getting off topic. Again, that's what I do. Anyways,
it's
so
okay, this makes it fun.
okay, good. For people who see sustainable fashion, which I know is
Mhm,
a big kind of
mhm,
part of your brand identity,
yeah,
I think a lot of people have been hearing that lately and they kind of think it is just buzzwords.
mhm.
How do you incorporate sustainable fashion into your brand, and how do you kind of redefine that?
Yeah, so that was also one of the things that we really wanted to do. We wanted, so it was a direct response to the Civil War, but it's also kind of this direct response to fast fashion. We wanted to create a slow fashion company. It meant something to the people making it, it meant something to the people that were buying it, but a lot of we didn't go crazy with inventory. We wanted to make sure that we did a lot of made to order pieces, which was really cool because, you've got that bespoke element, but also it's just a lot less wasteful. So we're buying much better fabrics, right, that are ethically produced. And we're also paying fair wages, and we are not wasting. So that was really important. But I think the main thing for me about sustainability, it's not just about that, right? It's not just about being sustainable for the planet. It has to be sustainable for the people. It's got to be sustainable for their livelihood, for their culture, for the preservation of the heritage and the livelihoods, right? It's not just only about it being sustainable for the planet.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I understand what you're saying there. I think that's a good point, a good way of framing it too. There's definitely been an uptick in brands that are becoming sustainable, but
Right.
really always sure what that actually means in practice.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, you've been running this fashion label for how long now?
So we did 2015 to 2019, and then we took a break, and now we're relaunching in January of 2026.
Okay, got it. So you've been working on this for a
Hmm.
while, especially now with relaunching it.
Correct.
What has been one of the more difficult or what has been the hardest part of running this kind of based mission driven fashion label?
I mean, I think one of the most difficult things running any kind of company is the survival of the company, especially when it's a company that is like a smaller company or it's mission driven or um, that's definitely the thing that we focus on and can be sometimes difficult. Social media is difficult, but that's because I don't like it. And that's definitely something that I would say. But I think fashion in general is a very competitive place to be. So if your bottom line is human dignity, you can't cut corners, right? And so at some level, even when it's really tempting to cut those corners, remembering that big picture and why we're doing what we're doing is what keeps us going.
For founders who are curious about kind of approaching things the way you have in blending
Yeah.
activism along with entrepreneurship, do you have any advice for them or things that you wish they understood?
Yeah. And I write about this in my kids' book about humanitarianism, which is that activism is like, it's really not just this like, it's not something that has to be difficult in humanitarianism in general, right? Like at some level, anybody that's doing anything can practice this and can incorporate it. Like, okay, fashion line, but it's also got this. Our tagline is where fashion meets humanitarianism, right? So it isn't just this like add on. I think if your business does not serve people, then it's just profit, right? But I think the best businesses are the ones that heal as they're growing, as they're scaling. And there's so much good that you could do in the world, whatever capacity and whatever industry and sector that you're in.
Has there been ever a time when you are doing this work that you felt like this is really heavy? Like, I assume that what you're working through and working with everybody else, it seems like it would take an emotional toll after a while. Is there
Yeah.
ever been a moment like that for you? And if so, like, what kind of kept you going through that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for sure a lot of the stories are heavy. The other side of what I do is that cultural orientation at resettlement centers, which we're not doing right now because of the current administration. But those stories are heavy, right? A lot of the healing circles that we will provide, by nature, those stories are difficult. But the reality is, those people are the ones that have experienced that. They're the ones that have gone through it and they're not able to quit, right? Like they don't have that option. And so I obviously get a lot of inspiration from them. I see and it puts things into perspective, of course. But I see what other people are still going through, right, in occupied parts of the world and in all kinds of places, and they don't have the option to quit, right? They don't have the option to just give up and be like, oh, this is too heavy. And so I feel very privileged to be in a space where I'm able to help in whatever minimal way that I can. But it would almost feel like really awful if I'm like, this is too heavy, and I feel like I can't go on when people are really suffering and they don't have the option.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess I want to know, looking
Mhm,
ahead, 5 years
mhm.
ahead, where do you hope Blue Meets Blue will be at that time?
I mean, it would be really awesome if it is carried in, stores. I'd love for it to be a house for refugee-made luxury clothing items, things that are home goods that refugees make, all kinds of different stories, right? It would be really awesome for it to have its own brick and mortar and become a part of because for me, blue meets blue, like the center of the brand is where fashion meets humanitarianism. Like I don't want that to be just on the periphery. I want it to be the center of the brand. I hope that it inspires other people to adopt a similar mentality, but I would love to see it, just take off and employ a lot of refugees in the US.
If you could collaborate with any one global fashion house or institution, do you have somebody in mind?
That's a really good question. I think it would be really cool if, like, UNESCO, for example, they're all about cultural heritage and ensuring that future generations know stories of resilience through craft. So that would be a really awesome collaboration. And then any kind of couture house to see Syrian brocade reimagined on like a global runway by a couture house would be this really awesome opportunity to bridge that gap between heritage and tradition and then something that's like modern, right? And then proving that refugee made is one really awesome and it belongs at the highest level of artistry.
Yeah, absolutely. I have in my mind, I feel like there is a Syrian refugee label. I'm trying to remember. You would probably know better than me. Um, anyways, I'll have to look it up after this, but
Please
uh,
do. Let
yeah,
me know.
send it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you're launching obviously in 2026. So
Mhm.
what is exciting you the most about this next season of your work?
The Damascus brocade. So this is the time where we are, like I said, we just went to Syria this summer and we were able to source our fabric from there. So I'm really excited about that because we weren't able to do that for our last collections because we weren't able to go to the country. So that's to me right now like super exciting. I feel like it's really bringing the story full circle and it just makes so much sense.
Yeah. Great. I'm excited to see. It's gonna be so cool.
Thanks.
Okay, so I don't want to take up way too much more of your
Mhm.
time. So I have some rapid fires for you, which is always fun for me.
Mhm.
Also, no pressure to answer rapid fire.
Okay. I like rapid fire too.
Sometimes- Okay, good. I like the answers take more than a couple of words, but
Okay. I'll try to keep it short.
no worries.
I tend to go on tangents.
I like it. I like it. That's I'm the same way. So, what do you think is one of the most underrated wardrobe items?
I think a really beautiful, simple A-line skirt.
Mm, I love that. I feel like A-line skirts are coming back
For
very
sure.
much so.
They've always been our top sellers, and it's because we put pockets in ours, so yes,
Everything is better with pockets.
everything's better with pockets, 100%.
Okay, do you have one fashion rule that you'd like to eliminate?
That luxury has to be exclusive. I think that it can absolutely be something that everybody can be a part of.
Yeah, great answer. Okay, is there one Syrian textile or craft detail the world should know about?
Damascus silk
I
brocade.
was I was like, "I think I know what it is."
Yep.
Okay, good. Do you have kind of a go-to outfit when you need to feel more grounded and confident?
I think it depends on the occasion and where I'm going, but definitely a good A-line skirt and a simple blouse is always you can dress it up, you can dress it down, and it's always chic.
Yeah. Do you have any courses or books or resources that you would recommend to kind of budding entrepreneurs?
Wow, that's a great question. Yeah, I actually do have a bunch. Oh my gosh, I can't think off the top of my head, but I mean, I'll probably have to send those over and you might have to put them in the notes, but I do
Okay,
have a
okay, yeah.
bunch. Yeah.
All right, good. That's what I like to hear.
Mhm.
Is there, my final question, is there one humanitarian leader or thinker who really inspires your work?
Yeah. It's so funny because I met him in 2020. His name, and I don't want to butcher his name, but he's the founder of Chobani Yogurt, Hamdi Ulukaya, something like that. So he started Chobani Yogurt and he has been employing and hiring refugees. And it's really amazing because they have built such a strong company and a really strong community, and they've been really successful. And he's opened factory after factory, and I believe he was a refugee too. when he came to the US. So we had partnered with, they made, I forgot what it was called, I think tent partnership for refugees. And so we were partnered with them through Blue Meets Blue, and it was a really awesome experience. Um, I had always been inspired by his work because he is somebody who that this not only can be successful, but it can be scalable. And then other than that, I really like storytellers, right? Like everything that I do, I feel like I weave story. So for example, the author of Kite Runner, Khaled Hosseini, or um, different authors and different movie makers, because I believe that media connects us. I believe that music connects us. I believe that really good books connect us. And so he wrote, Kite Runner and A Thousand Splendid Suns. And I've always been inspired by his storytelling as a way to, tell stories about what his people had gone through to the world in an incredible way. So those are, you asked for one, but I gave you two.
Okay, I'll take it. Wow, that's so interesting too about the Chobani founder. I had
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
idea. Oh, that's
No, his
brilliant.
story is incredible. And I,
Yeah,
I know I didn't do it justice, but I wanted to keep it simple. But I recommend for anybody who's interested in creating a business that helps people, like this is a really awesome example.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
great. I'm gonna have to look that up after this. That's brilliant. Um, okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Shahid, for coming on.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. It's been such a good conversation. I'm really excited for people to hear this.
Yeah.
So, where can people find you? Where can they follow your work, get your book, all those things?
So bluemeetsblue.com is the website. We will be launching the line in January, and then Instagram Blue Meets Blue. And the book is called A Kid's Book About Humanitarianism, and that is online on Barnes and Amazon and Target and all the places where you can buy books online, I guess. So it's called and the website A Kid's Book About. I recommend visiting that because there's so many other topics there that are incredible to read with your child, for librarians, for educators, for parents.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And obviously, all of that will be in the show notes as well for people listening.
So
But yeah, okay,
you're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
of course.